Howdy! Welcome to Yoga How To. Today we're going to talk about the complexity and nuance that yoga reminds us is such an intrinsic part of life. So, yes and, this and that, nuance over novelty. Let's get into it. So in yoga, there's this concept of Viveka, which is discriminative discernment. It's the ability to be able to suss out this from that. And so often in binary thinking, we're tracking this or that in life in terms of how we let our understanding of a concept lead us forward. The practice of yoga through Viveka, cultivating Viveka through our practice, teaches us that life's outcomes and the application of how we employ our practice off the mat is much more nuanced than this and that. It is not a didactic black and white binary. In fact, so often the more complex things in life require this and that thinking, or as sometimes we can call it, is critical thinking, which was one of the great things I got from my art school degree, which then later helped me become a yoga teacher. But one of the things I got in college, I remember taking theater classes, and we did an improv course. And if you're not familiar with improv, the first kind of golden rule of improv is you just imply yes and. Yes and is always your response. So if somebody brings something up out of the ether, just brings something up, whatever it is, you say yes and. Because anytime you say no in improv, it just stops things dead in their tracks. So not only do you accept whatever playfulness that they're bringing to the sandbox in the improv, but then you extend on it, you expand on it, and you kind of volley it back. It's like a tennis game. And this is a great metaphor for life, and this is a way to stay in a relationship, in conversation with the horizon of our life, as David Whyte would say, the Irish poet. And this is a great way to really start to work our yoga off the mat, which Viveka is a great tool to be flexing the muscle of yoga off the mat with. Even inherent in the yoga postures that we do, for instance, like a beginner class or a hot class with the same 26 postures, even the fundamentals of a yoga class, you think about how many asanas are there in all? Maybe 350? I don't know. Shiva says there's 80,000 of them, but the ones that we do, the ones that we can do, it's relatively small. And out of those 300, if you're really pushing it, maybe, a pretty small percentage, less than a third, I would say, are what we would call like foundational poses, or poses that you would return to in your practice day in, day out. Maybe way less than a third. I'm thinking down dog, I'm thinking up dog, I'm thinking warrior two, I'm thinking tadasana, shavasana, a twist of sorts. In a general 60-minute class, you're probably doing somewhere between 20 and 30 different poses. And if you go to a class such as the one that I used to teach when I first started teaching, I taught a class that was structured around a sequence. So therefore it was the same sequence every single week. And I see so often young teachers and even yoga students get sucked into the trap of novelty, seeking novelty. And the class that I taught was well attended and very popular, and it had nothing to do, just like a hot class, with the novelty of the sequence being surprise, gotcha, you didn't know what was coming next, right? It allowed me as a teacher to hunker into the refinement of cues and how I taught and the way that I threaded the theme throughout, because this one thing was an edifice of class. This structure and foundation of the sequence and the poses was something I could just be on default with. I didn't have to contend with using bandwidth of my brain power for that. Therefore, I could put that to higher order things of connecting to the class, creating inspiration, creating moments of appreciation. Another thing that happens with novelty when we get a bit novelty kind of obsessed is that it's self-satisfying and self-gratifying, but in a very short-term sense, because it kind of hacks the dopamine centers. Whereas when we can shift from a novelty mindset to a nuance mindset around life and the things that we're attracted to, the things we put our energy into, the things we give our attention to, we find that these things are much more not only long-lasting in terms of the reward of the gratification and the satisfaction that come along with them, but there's also much more enrichment in it. It's very nuance is much more educational, and it creates a suppleness to the way in which we engage with what we're learning, how we're growing in life, whereas novelty tends to ultimately lean to an edge of disposability, where we're always looking for the next new thing. We're always looking for the next. And so just because it's not new anymore doesn't mean that it's not qualitative. Doesn't mean it's not enriching. And so remembering that at the outset, because it might not be sexy, it might not be attractive, but actually taking deep dives into things is the way in which we cultivate this Viveka over time, this way in which our yoga practice thrives and generates wisdom, so that when we are in need of making the big decisions in life, especially with complex decisions that require deep critical thinking and wisdom and perhaps some intuition, we've been practicing all along and not hijacking our innate ability to be kind of our own authority in those big moments of life. One other way this distinction of this and that comes up versus this or that is, and it's kind of peppered throughout all yoga philosophy, but one really kind of shining example that's easy to grasp is the niyama santosha. So it asks us to practice contentment as a yogi, right? Well, when the world feels like it's burning down, contentment feels egregious. It feels inappropriate. So we have to understand that yoga is not saying this or that, like you're either like out there at the front lines trying to change the world and make things better, or you're sitting somewhere completely head in the sand, spiritually bypassing things and being like, well, my inner peace is here, so I'm okay. What it's talking about with the niyamas, there's always context, and that context is where the richness of nuance really asks us to divine what is being meant, and not to just appropriate things for our own purposes of ease and utility and comfort, but to really look at the teaching of the sutras, which is where I'm kind of gleaning the context from this out of. And niyama is a way that we focus on our inner locus of control. So I can't control that the world is burning down doesn't mean I shouldn't do something about it. In fact, the yamas, the moral observances, talk about how I should do things in regards to my relationship with the outside world. The niyamas are very much more what I can control. And so in this inner environment, if I am going to go do something to make the world a better place, if I am in a place of contentment with myself, then I am an agent under control of my own discipline and authority. So that's my hot take on Santosha. I know that's a tricky one. That might be a great place for you to weigh in and see how I got it wrong or what you may think about it differently. But this is a great point in yoga that it's a this and that. Yes, we do need to strive for contentment, and we also need to find ways to motivate ourselves to change things in life. But do we need to give discontent all the way up for discontentment to do that? Good question. Lastly, I want to talk about the principle of nuance in terms of language, how we define things. So oftentimes I have felt that the idea of being deserving of something and worthy of something are the same thing, when in fact they are actually not the same thing. And it only harms me and others when I think in kind of dense ways around complicated ideas. So let me explain. Life isn't fair. We can all agree on that, right? Like, there are people who get things they don't deserve. I'm been a lifelong musician. I've seen many a musician become very successful who have less talent than other friends of mine who have more talent in their pinky than I have, and who have never gone anywhere with what they have deserved in terms of success, in terms of outcome, in terms of what ultimately comes down to a huge amount of luck. And I know a lot of people are going to disagree with me. They think you make your own luck in life. But deserving something is the aspect of what is beyond your control. You can do all the right things. You can perspire and put all the work, blood, sweat, and tears into hoping that you will achieve the thing that you want to achieve. And sometimes it works out for you. And that can bias you to think, well, then that person just didn't work hard enough. But life is finicky that way. Life is fiddly. Life is fickle. But it never means, whether you get your just desserts or not, that you're not worthy. And that's a fundamental component of yoga. In fact, in every spiritual tradition, in every religion, there is this kind of inner conceit of a sense of worthiness. And yoga is no different. In fact, yoga speaks it loud and proud, talking about how you are, in fact, worthy no matter what the outcomes are, no matter what karma you've gone through, no matter what your dharma and purpose in life are. The Bhagavad Gita talks about this. Chapter 2, verse 20, the soul is never born, nor does it die at any time. Having once been, it never ceases to be. Unborn, eternal, ever existing, ancient. It is not slain when the body is slain. And that essentially is about seeing your true identity, that you are divine, you are part of Purusha. So Viveka, we can start to see how on many areas in our life gives us the ability to cultivate this power of critical thinking so that we can dive into the depths of nuance around complex problems that interface with our life, that when we just take them at face value might lead us into a sort of failure around our thinking, because we just don't take the time to make the shift from an idea of, oh, if I failed, I'm unworthy, versus the yogic kind of correction that comes along with, which this failure is an opportunity for growth. This failure is an opportunity for learning. And the expression of this failure in my life has no bearing on the essence of my worth. So, hope you got something out of this. A little off the mat theming today. A little discernment, a little discrimination, a little critical thinking, a little bit of wisdom. This is how we cultivate our yoga practice off the mat. Thanks for watching Yoga How To today. Let us know what you think in the thoughts. Especially curious if that Santosha thing got you riled up or thinking more, or got your own sense of Viveka spinning. We'll see you next time. Thanks for watching.